agents, skills, show? Show us your agent skills. What are people at the top of the game building with AI agents, and how are they doing it? Are they Claudemaxxing with 8 terminals open at once, or adversarially testing Opus 4.7 generated code with Codex? Do they define suites and swarms of subagents, or use agents markdown and agent skills? We are on a mission to find out. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome Hamel, Doug, John Berryman, Thomas Wiecki, and Chris Fonnesbeck. What is up, fam?
Oh yeah, welcome.
That is an awesome intro.
How's it going? I'm a Claude Minning, actually.
Well, that's actually part of the joke. I'm thinking, I mean, we should talk about rebranding slightly this series, because it does look like, you know, the X power team. What do you do with OpenClaw this week, where you've got, you know, a trillion Mac Minis that are like phoning you in the morning to get you to become their Deliveroo driver and these types of things. And that isn't what this is at all, actually. What this has turned out to be, I think by nature of, you know, who our friends are in our community, are like long-time builders who are trying to make sense of how to use agents at the moment, and the things we're learning, the things that are failing, the things we warn ourselves about and want to warn others about. And so firstly, I just love to welcome everyone who's tuning in for the live stream, everyone who's watching after. I'm Hugo Bowne-Anderson, here with my co-host, with the co-most, Thomas Wiecki from PyMC Labs. What's up, Thomas?
How's it going? Excited for the show.
As am I. And this is the 4th episode. It's the season 1 finale, and we'll be starting up again in a few more weeks. And link is, if you want to register for the next episode in June, where we'll be having John Berryman, who's joining today as an interlocutor. We'll be there to present Isaac Flaff from Kensho, Matt Palmer from Conductor, and X-Replit. So that's going to be a really fun one. Just the obligatory, if you like these things, please do like and subscribe and share with friends, and leave a comment as well. If you don't like these things, no need to leave a comment at all. It's the internet. And we've linked to our Substack in the description, where you can find out more about these types of things and keep updated. Finally, the Q&A will be in the Discord, just so we can continue the conversation afterwards. And I put the link to that in the chat on YouTube as well. But without further ado, let's jump in. First up is Hamel Husain. What's up, Hamel?
Yo.
Great to see you, man.
Yeah, great to see you. Great to see everyone.
So Hamel is a machine learning engineer with over 20 years of experience, worked at Airbnb, GitHub. We met back in the day when we were both on the East Coast US. He was working at Data Robot. He also did a bunch of early LLM research used by OpenAI for code understanding. One of the things I really appreciate about Hamel, he says he's working to bring data science back to AI, so helping teams debug, analyze, measure their systems, which he calls evals. And this is the really big focus of what he does. I'm kind of projecting in a lot of ways, but something I've always appreciated about Hamel, which is relevant here, is he wants to help people build things and maintain things that work for them. And it just so happens that to do that, looking at your data, looking at your systems, and doing evals now with AI is incredibly important. But that's been a long kind of running thread through your work, right, Hamel?
Yeah, definitely. I wish I could bring you along to every public appearance that I have. That would be amazing.
Well, maybe, you know, we had Alan Nickel on last week from Raza, who he's building tutorial videos for Raza, all the natural language chatbot AI stuff he's doing in Claude Code using remotion, but it's all agent-based, and he has a skill which deep fakes him into everything he writes, essentially, and can build tutorial videos from the command line. So all that's to say is, in Claude Code, maybe you can get your own Hugo very soon. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
I want to say too, Hamel is a fantastic hype man himself. So if you ever go speak on one of Hamel's things, he's also a great hype man. So it's nice to know great hype men.
And before we dive in with Hamel, Hamel did send me a demo video before this, which I just wanted to show everyone.
Nice.
So really appreciate you sending that through. That's generally Hamel's workflow. I'll link to the GitHub repository for this entire show series in the Discord, and you can find a skill which allows you to build videos like that of you and your friends using Replicate and Cdance and all these fun things. So we do that for all the guests. So without further ado, we start off with 2 questions for each guest, Hamel. The first question is, what do you love about working with agents?
Just makes a lot of things easier.
Beautiful. What frustrates you most about working with agents?
I guess what frustrates me, that's a good question. I mean, I think it's so wonderful. It's like really hard to put myself in the space of like when I don't find myself frustrated. If anything, I get frustrated with myself, not the agent. But I think it's, yeah, I think it's just like steering the agent sometimes. Like I would say I get most frustrated with writing the tasks when I try to do. Anytime I've tried to do large swaths of writing with AI, I kind of, when I try it, I sort of give up because it's really difficult for AI not to sound like slop unless you are super in the loop. And so like I don't do it. Like I just sort of am very careful. I use it more like an editor or like something that checks my writing rather than something that wholesale does the writing, especially long writing.
I totally agree. And as you've pointed out and we've discussed before, a lot of different models and systems have their own smells. Claude currently the term load bearing is jumping out to me a lot with Opus 4.7. It's constantly referring to things as load bearing for me.
Now 4.8.
Well, exactly. We'll see. And with steering, I'm actually very interested in 4.8. It looks like, there may be certain self-steering mechanisms, whatever that may mean, for it to inject into itself as it's doing things. I've actually, Jason might come on the show, Jason Liu, in a few weeks, and the steering he's doing with Codex is fascinating. His blog post, everyone's recent blog post, people should check out. But steering in Codex, I found a lot better recently than what I can do in Claude Code. Have you had a similar experience? Or?
I mean, I just like the UI of Codex Desktop. I think it's unparalleled, meaning, it's just super polished and very impressive. I never thought I would leave the terminal. And then I tried Codex Desktop app, and I was like, wow, this is actually better. It shocked me.
Yeah.
Because I never thought I would say that. I really never thought I would say that. But it just has so much functionality in it that's just useful that I think it's great. So, I mean, that sort of polish just makes this really compelling. It's just it's a lot easier to do things like computer use, for example, which is a super useful thing. And it works natively on your Mac. But then also all this, any scheduling, and they have the best remote system that I've used. So you can run Codex headless on your Mac Mini, and then you can see all the sessions on your Mac Mini in the sidebar. Or you can SSH. You can SSH through the desktop app, which is a little bit different, but you can kind of get this very high fidelity sort of remote. And then it also works fantastic. It's like a first party thing that works really good on your phone. And I have kids, so I'm on my phone all the time. I'm walking around, whatever. And it's so convenient because like the remote control on Claude is like it's okay. Like there's a lot of edge cases that sort of don't stop working on mobile. So like there's all these little things like that where I'm like, wow, okay, like the UI just makes it so convenient. And then there's like one other detail that I think is super important, which is okay, like there's the fast mode. You know, fast mode, like Claude has like some kind of extra fast, and then Codex has fast, whatever it's called. So Codex will allow you to trigger fast within your billing, within your subscription. So like your $200 a month subscription, you can just toll your subscription at 1.5x. But Claude makes you like pay extra outside the $200. So that's huge because you kind of, if you have a subscription, you're like, well, you can just go faster with the highest, like most frontier model, and that gap in user experience is like very large if you're having, because the sort of the fast or the best models at high thinking is quite slow, so it just makes like a huge difference. Like all these things stack together for me recently to where I've like started using Codex a lot more. I still use Claude for like writing and like creative tasks, just because I'm used to it, just because like, I don't know, like I kind of understand it. But yeah, it's really pulled me away. So that's mine. I'm curious like what everyone else's.
As the interlocutor, do I get to like jump in and ask questions of the guests too?
Well, yeah. Please do. I think I do want to give Hamel time to show us all his things. But yes, and just quickly, everyone, John, our guest interlocutor, Arcturus Labs, wrote several books. You can see them on the wall behind him. Relevant Search, he co-wrote with Doug here. And he was an early engineer on GitHub Copilot as well.
I didn't need an intro, but thank you for that. Is Codex? I haven't played with Codex. I saw you posting about it, and like I'm already behind on like the browser usage stuff. Like I need to catch up on that for agent stuff. But is this sort of like its answer to OpenClaw or Claude Cowork? Are people using it? Sounds like remotely is easy, but are you also using it for stuff outside of development? I mean, like there's authoring stuff.
Yeah, I use it for like so many things. I haven't found. I got frustrated with OpenClaw. Like I found that I was spending more time making tools for OpenClaw and debugging OpenClaw than I was like using OpenClaw. And then I decided, you know what, forget it. Like, and there's the gap between that and like Codex and whatever else you can do was like shrinking, right? Like I can have like I can schedule automations with the Codex desktop app, even with the Claude desktop app. I can connect them to Slack, whatever. Like it's not really, I just found that, okay, like I can just use like the harness that I use everywhere else. So it's, I just, and it was just like always buggy all the time. And I just gave up. I'm like, I don't do it.
I found something similar. The amount of ongoing maintenance I needed to do around tool use, memory. Some of the memory stuff I actually really enjoy doing, in terms of figuring out what goes into daily logs, monthly logs, this type of stuff, and how to start building vector DBs around my core memory. But I have found the automations brought in by the vendors superior. Even like daily heartbeats using, OpenAI. ChatGPT. The other thing I want to flag, I mean, Hamel's just listed maybe 5 different things that are really important with how we want to work with these things. And I don't think, like Codex or not, that's how Hamel can do these things today. But, the importance of being able to do things remotely, for example. And I did find Claude, I could do that with, very strangely, even when I was doing it remotely, sometimes it would ask for permissions locally, not remotely, and I was stuck there and unable to communicate.
That's really annoying when that happens.
With it.
So annoying.
The other thing I wanted to say before jumping into what you'd like to show us is, I love that you said, maybe you get more frustrated with yourself. This feels a bit Stockholm syndrome-y, but I like it. It does speak to kind of a point Karpathy and others made in that it's he said when the agent doesn't seem to be able to do something, I actually think it's a skills issue. It's about me, and I partially agree with that. I also think if you're having to do a lot of work to do it, then perhaps in the product or in how we build our skills and workflows around it, perhaps there can be more done then. Because I don't think you always want to be going, oh, is this me or is it the machine?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the orchestration that you had to do is like disappearing and going, the harnesses are like absorbing them. So like, okay, like the Ralph Wiggum loop or whatever. So like Claude has loop, Cloud Code has loop, and like Codex has goal and whatever. And then like today there's like workflow even with Claude Code. So I think like, they're just, you don't have to like orchestrate it yourself anymore.
Totally. And we'll be seeing so many more developments there as well. I think the one thing you didn't mention, which I know is incredibly important to you, very important to me, and a through line of a lot of the guests we've had, is voice. Being able to speak to your agent and then get ideally rapid visual feedback. We don't want the agent really to speak to us, but of course that's why we rediscovered HTML through building with agents, right? That we inject voice into the agent, our easiest way to communicate, getting rapid visual feedback, best way to get information back and then iterate, right?
Yeah, one coding harness that I surprisingly really like now is Devin from Cognition. I used to not like it. I used to hate it.
Yeah.
I even wrote a blog post like, oh, I think it's a scam, like when early on. But I changed my mind on it. It's just super polished. Like the UX is so good. And it does, so it's like wired up to always try to show you a demo video and screenshots of what it's done. Which is like incredibly useful. I think Cursor will do this too, especially on the cloud. So I think this like idea of like the agent doing it, giving you proof of work that you can super easily verify is huge. Like that's like what a good product is. Like if you can eval it quickly, and so yeah, I really like it. It has like the best, like most polished Slack integration also. It's like I don't have to worry about this stuff. I don't have to like debug or like get like sort of frustrated. It is expensive though. It's very expensive. But some is less expensive than a human, I think. So it's fine.
Yeah, and depending how I'll pay money to reduce headaches in my life as well. It's one of my favorite things to do, actually. One final question before we jump in. You mentioned Codex in the terminal. Do you use an IDE still much? Do you read much code?
I'll pop open Cursor sometimes when I want to see things. I do like Cursor a lot. Like I just use it just like it's helpful to see what files are being changed and just be able to like kind of look at things, especially when I'm trying to touch prompts or like the AI part of the workflow, especially prompts. I believe like you always have to look at the prompts, like if it's being changed. So yeah, I'll open it for any kind of editing or reading of Markdown or anything like that. I'll have it open.
Awesome. And the reason I asked that is, once again, we want to kind of let people know how builders are building. And we had Wes McKinney on our first episode, and he's like, what's an IDE? Hilary Mason in the second episode was like, I still use an IDE all the time. Brian Bischoff as well, he's here to heckle and troll in the chat. Everyone jump into Discord and introduce yourself and heckle with Brian as well. So it's really interesting to see what's up there. And I love your dictum, read the prompt or show me the effing prompt as well. And one of the reasons I still feel I need to do that so much is LLMs totally over specify prompts when they don't trust themselves. When I get, Opus, for example, to write a skill, like I'll do a workflow, say, can you create a skill? It'll like over specify in the wildest way and not trust a future version of itself, right?
Yes, yeah. So a lot of skills that you see out there, I believe, are made for Twitter. Like, and the author's not using it at all. Okay, so they're just like, they just went to Claude Code and they said, hey, create a skill for like whatever, like XYZ. And then just post it on Twitter, like, here's my skill. And then what you often see is that skill only has one commit. It's like, after, and it stays at one commit. And then if you look at it, it's just like, it's just written by AI. And then you have to wonder, like, okay, number one, is the author using it? And if the author is not using it or iterating on a skill, it becomes increasingly suspect, like whether the skill is good, right? Um, and so, and if they haven't put, like, what I would want instead is like the person's prompt. Because like in those situations, sometimes the skill is just a decompressed version of their prompt, and it would be better just to have the prompt because I don't need all the slop of like this like skill. So that's something you have to be careful of, I think, is to like look at the prompt and look at the skill, which is like kind of what I was going to talk about today.
Well, that's a great segue to jumping in. So do you want to share your screen and show us what's up? And to that point as well, I mean, Randy Olson, who we had in episode 1, in most of his skills at the bottom, the last step is iterate on this skill with the user based on what you've learned together when you did this workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me share my screen. And my little talk is only like 5 minutes or less, or maybe 10 minutes. Let's see if that's true, but I think it's true.
I'll set the timer.
Let's see, share my screen. Here we go. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay.
That's great.
I like to be spicy, so I thought, the series was like, show me your skills. So internally, I was like, okay, a lot of times, like, I don't want to see anyone's skills. Like, maybe I'll read them, but I certainly don't want to use a lot of these skills. And I'll tell you why. Skills can be useful. And this includes my skills. I'm gonna put myself on blast a little bit here in a little bit. But what I want to like say is like, be skeptical of skills. Like, if you go on Twitter and say like, hey, this skill is amazing, it changed my life, blah blah blah, it does all this stuff. Okay, like, approach everything with a little bit of skepticism. Take a look, just read it. Take some time to read like what is there and look at it. Okay, so first let's talk about myself. So as Hugo mentioned, I teach a class on evals. I've taught over 4,500 people. We have like thousands of hours of questions and answers from students, and we have a book. We have all this stuff. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to like distill it into skills? Okay. And so I published these skills. It was like, okay, I have one skill that does an eval audit. So it will go through and it'll see if you're making any of the common mistakes that students make. Or like another skill that's like, trying to help you evaluate RAG. So like, trying to help you make sure you have the right things in place. There's another one for error analysis. There's another one for validating that your LLM judge is like calibrated to human, and so on and so forth. There's like a handful of skills here. And so it looks good, right? Like, it looks like a good idea. You're like, oh, I want these skills. Maybe the chat right now is like, can I get a link to these skills? And I would say, I was like, yeah, I thought it was useful. But what happens is, like, I realized that I think publishing these skills may be leading lots of people in the wrong direction. So it's like maybe good on the surface, right? Like, I can, it looks like, gives you the illusion that this is comprehensive, maybe. And I tried to say, like, don't just use these skills, like, customize it for yourself. But like, if you release skills, no one is going to customize it. No one's going to look at it. Okay, it's just human nature. And then people will feel like they're done. Like, you have this eval skill, you must be doing it right because you have Hamel's eval skill. That's the way you have to think. Like, okay, how are people using it? And Yeah, I hate it. I ended up hating my own skill. I realized like this is a bad idea. Okay. Like 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 I mentioned, there's like thousands of hours of like instruction and like office hours and Q&A and all kinds of stuff, all kinds of information. And like there's a lot of nuanced questions people have about evals. Like, what do you do when it's multimodal in a certain situation where you can't, when you have like PII and whatever, like there's all kinds of crazy questions that people have. And we have answers for all of those. But like, it's unreasonable to just push them all into a skill. Because the skill is like a compression, right? And like I said, people over rely on the skill. So what I end up doing is like, okay, the skill is still there, but I ended up making this like MCP, which okay, so like basically I have this like chatbot thing that my students already use, and I can do a little bit. I can see what they're doing. So like here's a question. Okay, I'm trying to create a golden data set for a system that's in development. It's a simple query classifier that does XYZ. The purpose of the classification is to try to short circuit or route queries. Okay, fine. I'm just going to copy and paste this question. I was going to show you. So I have this I replaced it with this thing. And just what it does is it just queries all of the knowledge. Like it queries the course. It'll search through all the sources of the course. It'll give you an answer. But more importantly, like there's an MCP that you can install. You know, there's an MCP that you can install that will do the same thing. Because I'm like, who the hell wants to open this web application, use this chatbot? Nobody. I mean, it's good to just show you once, but like, okay, forget it. And the reason this is better because now you have more fidelity for like the kind of information I'm trying to give people. I'm like, okay, this is higher fidelity. You can actually get answers to your nuanced question, and you can go like way further. And there's no reason for me to compress all of that knowledge into a skill. Like that's the wrong idea. Like especially since I have access to that data, like why would I do that? So like, it was the wrong choice. I ended up saying, forget it. Also, if you look at my skills, like, okay, like I haven't updated in 2 months. So it's like, am I using the skill? No, because I'm using this other thing. So that's already a smell that like, okay, maybe this skill is a good starting point, maybe, but it should be skeptical. Okay, so like, judging the quality of skills. We already talked about some of this. Look at if the skill is being iterated on. Look at the commit history, the age of the skill, as well. Like, how stale is it? And then like prompts versus code. So if like, so the purpose of a skill or a big kind of utility of a skill is like how much it constrains your agent. And like, I guess, that's basically like the same meaning as a harness, is like constrain you in a useful way. And so the more constraints that your skill imposes, it's a sum signal that is good. If it's just a single prompt in a single file, that seems a little bit less useful, honestly. If it's like a bunch of code, tools, things like that, that's more of a signal that is like trying to constrain your agent more, and thus maybe more useful because someone has found useful constraints. So that's the kind of way I try to think about it. I did some data analysis. I love looking at data, and I think it's useful like even outside evals. But like, okay, there's this site called skills.sh. It's like a good repo, or a good like, let's say like a way to discover skills and like install skills. It's very useful. But like, okay, I took the top 300 skills by amount they're downloaded and looked at the number of commits. Okay, and about a third of all those skills only have one commit. So just think about it. Like, if you're going to use a skill, if it's not being iterated on, is it actually, you have to like tune up your skepticism a little bit and say, maybe this skill is very shallow, and it may not be, the ceiling may not, it might be very low in terms of like what the skill is imparting to you, because it's not being iterated on. So you have to be really careful. And then, yeah, most skills are just prompts. There's someone else's prompts. And I would recommend, like, if you're going to just adopt someone else's prompts wholesale, okay, you have to think, like, you should be reading the prompt and figuring out, like, what applies to you and what doesn't. And okay, like, what are these skills? So these are like the top 10 prompt only skills. I excluded these like Azure ones because Azure, they have like have a bunch of skills that like have flood this particular like marketplace. But like, okay, like one of the most popular ones is like this Anthropic one, front end design. Only one commit 6 months ago. Okay, maybe it's okay, but I don't know. Like, is this really so? You know, if there's been no iteration on it in 6 months, you have to wonder, is it good? And I know a lot of people are using this. I used to, I was using this for a long time too. I just got tired of my websites looking the same, so I stopped using it. There's another one called GitHub Actions. Okay, if you look at it, it says 3 commits. Okay, you have to be careful. Like, you have to see, like, what is this, right? So if you come to this GitHub Actions one, it's basically the sitemap of the GitHub Actions docs. That's what that's all this skill is. Okay. Because if you come here, you look at the skill.md, it just basically, it's not clear to me like that you need this, honestly. If you use the GHCLI, I don't think you need this skill. I battle GitHub Actions all the time, and I don't know about it. But what I would say is, like, you should look at what it is. And these are some of the ones containing code, which is a lot less problematic. I think some of these are actually like the ones with one commit, like this grill me thing, is actually pretty funny. And like, okay, like comedy-based skills, great. I mean, sure, you just need one commit. So it's like all contextual. I'm not trying to say like, oh, okay, you just have one commit, you're bad, shame on you. No, it's like based on the context, maybe okay. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say here is like, look, when you see a skill, you should whisper to yourself, maybe fuck your skills, including my skills. Don't trust anyone's skills, even if they're my skills. Just be careful. That's all I want to say. All right, I hand it back to you.
So much valuable insight in there, Hamel. The first few things that come to mind are, you haven't even mentioned so firstly, I totally agree. You haven't even mentioned the security nightmare of skills, where even when you have scripts embedded in them, like they can go and pull malicious stuff from the internet. And if you have, the lethal trifecta of the ability to, what Simon Wilson has called the lethal trifecta, the ability to write, the ability to bring in information and access to personal data, skills are a potential nightmare there. And that's even just in a markdown, right? Something Matthew Honnibal from Spacey showed last week, all of his skills he actually has as .txts. And one thing he's really nervous about is invisible HTML embedded in .mds. So when you preview it, you can't actually even read everything as a human. So you need to go to source, which I find super interesting. I do want to push back on one. So the utility of skills for me, and Jeremiah Lowen from Prefect came and talked. When he was on the show in the first episode, he was like, I want to frame how I use AI today as personal software and just-in-time software and ephemeral software. And he said that isn't to say that these things won't be useful for other people, but they'll need to figure it out as well. So something I love about skills, firstly, I iterate on them, and they are quite personal to me and my workflows. But when I share them, people should be in the loop and adopt them to their needs. And I'll share one that I use all the time, which is Anthropic's skill creator skill. So I'll do a workflow and then say, can you turn that into, I mentioned it earlier, right? Can you turn that into a skill? And the way they've done their skill doesn't quite work for me for a number of reasons. And I want to make sure that then I can test the skill in a variety of ways. And so I have my own version of their skill. So I actually think most skills we share, if adopted well, they'll become personal for other people. And so it's a way of not only steering and constraining an agent, but sharing via some form of instructional memory our workflows with each other that then become personalized. Does that resonate?
Yeah, I think the sharing part is definitely very, very good. Yeah, I was, and that's that. Yeah, the constraining part is not the only useful bit of it. I'm just saying, like, okay, that is one of the dimensions on which, like, I try to see, like, is this skill going to be valuable for me personally? But yeah, I mean, and there's a lot that it's kind of like how you would judge code. It also is like, does it publish by a person that you trust? So if like John gave me a skill or Brian gave me a skill, who's in the audience or whoever, right? It's like, okay, yeah, I'll trust this skill, because they're giving it to me, like, and I know them. So it's like it's like kind of like how you would judge code on GitHub in a lot of ways. Um, it's like, hey, I try to see like what are some signals, that you should take the skill seriously.
And there was also recently a study on the Claude.md files actually can like also be detrimental to performance. So you might actually observe the same with skills. And I'm curious if you had done or thought about doing any evaluation of whether that skill actually achieves the purpose of like doing something better or faster, or maybe even actually degrades performance.
So like, okay, my setup is very smooth brained and maybe not as that flashy. Like I have a mono repo that has like all these different directories that like for different things I'm trying to do, whether it's like writing or so like something about the course or something about I have one for like memes, like eval memes. And they all have like the skills are like contained within those specific folders, and I just like sort of navigate. Sometimes I sit at the root and I try to like I direct the agent. But like, yeah, like that's basically my memory system as well. Like I just write to markdown files and I sort of curate the skills very carefully in a directory structure. Um, and I try really like, yeah, that's how I try to not have it pollute my context. Cause like I have found that like if I just overdo it, it gets really weird. Like, so, and I haven't found it that much overhead, honestly, to do that. Like sometimes I'll use an agent to clean up my directory as well. So yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah,
It's not fancy. It's just a giant directory of just stuff that's organized.
It makes me think too, maybe skills is the wrong solution to the problem. Like maybe coding agents should be better at doing research on the web for how to do difficult tasks. Because when I see people write about skills, it makes me think maybe people just need to write blog articles again, and agents could find blog articles. It kind of makes me think of that. I mean, now it's extra difficult because we have to deal with AI slop, but I guess there's AI slop in skills too. But yeah, it just makes me think maybe the entire workflow of boosting an agent's ability to deal with a difficult task or target it at something tricky is just we're using the wrong tool for the job.
I really love that. Like before AI or even now, like, okay, I know everyone on this call has like writes and blog posts and stuff. And like, I'm sure all of you have had the experience of like trying to search for a problem and you like find your own blog post or your own Stack Overflow thing. And you're like, oh, that's really useful. And that's kind of like why you wrote it in the first place. Cause like the first person you want to be useful is yourself. And so like, absolutely. I think you should, like, I often end up pointing my agent at just my own blog post when I try to do things. It's super handy. It's like, I already distilled the information in like the best way I can think of in this post. So like, yeah. Yeah, I think people should write more blog posts.
You don't point them at your Obsidian-based LLM wiki? No, I'm kidding, man. I do exactly the same. And funnily, I Google a lot of things and find you these days, Hamel. It's impossible to escape. I do love Doug's idea about using, like, making sure LLMs or agents are better at searching as well. And, Doug is eternally in search of search. And someone, if you want to really know about, how to do search, Doug and John are both really interesting people to follow there. I do also, I think using skills for this type of stuff can be good. Like you can instruct an agent I will push back a bit, like how to search a bit better. in a skill and making sure it has up-to-date information. Once again, it may be personal, and you may say, "Oh, I'll put everything in agents.md," but once again, a skill, the nature of the progressive disclosure does mean that I'm managing my context a bit better in a way that I don't need to think about as much. So I think there is some sort of utility there.
I think one of the neat things one of the proper applications of skills is like if you're doing something brand new and you haven't done it before, then I think it's a great idea to go on the internet and have your agent research the best processes for doing it. But if you find yourself doing it more than 3 times and it's like your thing, then eventually you do want to condense that. You do want to take out all the extra noise and compress it to just the part that you're interested in. So I think skills is really, for me, that's what I do. Like I'll find a skill and then I'll be like, this sucks, but now I've got a baseline and I'll start just rewriting the skill I downloaded.
That also sounds, to Hamel's point, like very specific to your digestion of general knowledge that might not be as applicable to like how I'm going to set up a Kubernetes cluster, and the things that like I see that I have to remember might be different than what you care about.
There's one thing.
We did it in a similar way.
Sorry.
We did it in a similar way for example, PyMC, right? So we release new versions, and then you have the agent try it, and actually it does get right eventually, but it'll just like take a long time and just like do like, oh, the API here changed and I didn't know that. And then the skill is actually also just a really useful condensation to just like, oh, well, here's the cached version basically of how to do this thing. So before the three times you took a really long time, I'm just going to shortcut that. And then it's not that the skill is allowing anything new, it's just doing it more efficiently. And those skills definitely are useful for other people as well. So we just like have it to keep the up-to-date use of the library faster than what is usually in the pre.
I was gonna say one of my favorite uses of skills is, okay, this is one thing that's like super underrated, is like websites that don't have APIs or MCPs that you still have to click around like a Neanderthal and like buttons and all that frustrating stuff. So like what I love to do is, use the Chrome extension. Claude has one, Codex has one, and I tell it to do a task. But while it's doing that task, I tell it to introspect the internal API of that site and like pay attention to what the routes are and how to programmatically like do all the things. And so it struggles the first time because it has to click around and whatever, navigate. And then I have it create a skill like for that thing. So like, okay, I know like Doug, John, Hugo, you all use Maven. Maven doesn't like to do anything on Maven, you have to click like thousands of buttons, right? So yeah, I have skills that basically, like I have a skill that can just fill out a lightning lesson or like create a course page like pseudo programmatically very quickly, because you can get this, the skill has access to the dev console and can listen to all the network traffic and can see like what requests are being sent, what requests are, how to hit the internal API routes. And then the skill knows like how to then like use that browser extension the next time to like get a cookie and then like go about its way without having to click around everywhere and just do it. So that's amazing. Like, and this is like a lot of websites are still pre-AI, like a lot of tools. And so that's how I get over that frustration. It's like my absolute favorite thing in the whole world.
Amazing. And
that skill, I need that skill. Where do I get that? I'm serious. I want that now.
Oh, so you just like, I have a YouTube video actually that walks through it. You can just point your agent at the YouTube video and just say, just do what Hamel did here. Here, let me get it.
And also, John, I'll share a skill with you later, which you'll point it at this YouTube video and it will do its best to write a skill based on what Hamel just said for you. And you can iterate on it with it.
Wait, sorry. It's the autoplay of YouTube. Sorry about that.
I love how everything is like so incredibly meta right now. I need
a skill for my skills.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could just like, yeah, you don't need to. Yeah, I also don't know what's gonna happen to YouTube eventually, because like I don't know who's is gonna like a lot of videos maybe people won't watch. I don't know.
We
How
need
do I?
YouTube for agents as well. But to your point, like the headless internet is going to become more and more important. I think there'll be like some caste-based system where, government websites, for example, perhaps you'll need to click around. IRS, let's say, for decades to come still. If you share the link in the chat, I'll put it in the Discord as well, Hamel.
Okay, thank you. I'll do that.
I do think this is a wonderful way to segue to our next guest, who Thomas will introduce in a second. But the ability of skills to encode instructional memory so we can see how experts do things and then adapt that to our workflows, I think is really important. And Chris Fonnesbeck some time ago wrote a PyMC skill for statistics, Bayesian modeling, these types of things, and inference that I've been using PyMC for years. But adapting this skill for me helped me understand how someone like Chris would use PyMC himself, and allowed me then to adapt it to my own workflows. But I needed to do a lot of thinking myself, how it's appropriate for me also, which I think is part of the conversation here. So I don't know, Thomas, as you work with Chris, maybe you want to introduce him.
Yeah. You want to play the video first?
Oh, yeah, exactly. As I bring that up, yes, so we've got a little video we made for Chris. Oh, actually, because Hamel mentioned trying to build Maven courses in the UI, Doug and I had this issue the other day, right? We're on a call, and we haven't told anyone about this yet publicly. Doug and I are about to announce a building agents course. So I'll link to it in Discord. But the real reason is Doug, I learned so much from him about search, and I do think search, retrieval, Rexess, all of these things are going to become more and more foundational for any builder in the space. And AI has made it, has democratized the ability to build search as well. So I do think for builders, learning how to build search agents is going to be increasingly important. So we've decided to build a course together about building agents with an emphasis on search and retrieval and all of that fun stuff. So I've shared a link to that in Discord, and we can chat about a bit more about that later, Doug. So now I have this video, and so this is Chris hard at work. The crowd goes wild.
I ran the wrong way around the bases.
I think it was in Australia, so we're not only upside down, we're reflected as well, and in the future.
Yeah, super excited to have Chris with us, who has hit home runs his entire career, starting with PyMC. So the man, the legend that has created PyMC 1.0, probably like 20 by now. Now we just released PyMC version 6.0. Has been a professor at Vanderbilt University, then worked for the Yankees and for the Phillies, and now we're super lucky to have him work with us at PyMC Labs. Welcome, Chris. Good to have you here.
Be here as always.
As always, what do you about working with?
What do I love the most? Of course, everybody says it just makes your life easier, but more specifically for me, it really frees my brain to focus on creative tasks. It takes away all of the boilerplate, all the boring stuff to focus on the fun stuff. But I guess the only other nuance to that I'd add is particularly in the context of data science, where you're building models, iterating on models, trying to solve a problem, as opposed to trying to build an application. It allows you to do almost infinite experimentation. Whereas in the past you'd take shortcuts and try fewer things because of the time that it would take for you to code it up and implement it. You can at flip of a switch, you can do that and be a lot more exhaustive and use your imagination in ways that you couldn't before. And because generally I'm lazy, and if I don't have a shortcut like that, I won't do it.
I feel agents are making us all better data scientists, right? Because now we actually can follow like the best procedures and not just like do that one analysis pass that we really think about, but do all of them. And I guess there's two things on that note. One is Decision Lab, which is something we open sourced, which actually does to taking an agent through the whole forking path of different choices of how to pre-process the data. And then these are also exactly the type of things that we'll talk about in the Mastering Agentic Data Science course with Hugo and Luca Fiaschi. That's going to start next week already. So then what on the flip side, what do you find most frustrating? What do you hate about working with agents?
It's not so much hate, but the things that are perhaps a downside for me is sometimes they're a little bit too seductive in a way, almost like social media or your phone. Sometimes end up leaning on them a little bit too heavily, and you can kind of paint yourself into a corner because you haven't done the work, you haven't done the research yourself, and it's too easy to ask the agent for it. And so sometimes it can lead you down the wrong path, and while the people like Wes McKinney can certainly not look at his code anymore because he's kind of optimized his process such that his agents are perhaps doing just as good a job as him of reviewing his code. I can't do that, and there's always a big learning component for me. So I'm always wary, not particularly on these frontier models that can do so much for you, relying on them a little bit too heavily, particularly in the beginning. So the seductiveness, I guess, of agents is not what I hate, but what I'm fearful of.
Yeah. Jeremiah Malone in the first episode said how he uses it as a second brain. I was like, I wish it would only be my second brain. For me, it's almost my first brain, and I miss understanding things myself. But yeah, I'm very curious to see what you got for us in store today and what your agent skills are.
Yeah, so I actually agree with a fair bit of what Hamel had to say in the sense that I too have sort of shied away from downloading. It's kind of like when you first discover MCP servers as well as skills, you kind of go out and search for everything that you might use and load it onto your system. And increasingly, that's a bad idea because it uses up context but again, you could load it up with kind of information that sometimes is out of date or irrelevant. But like I think there are really useful applications of skills, and the one that you mentioned and that Hugo mentioned before, which is the PyMC modeling skill, which is going to be extremely useful for users because particularly when a new version is released like PyMC 6, and these models are obviously trained on data from the past, and sometimes it's sort of 6 to 12 months out of date depending on which model that you're using. And so the internet is full of sort of PyMC 3 models and PyMC 3 information, but there's really nothing yet on PyMC 6 or more recent features. And so if you want to be using those in your data science workflow, it's useful to have skills like that to do it. The PyMC modeling skill perhaps isn't the sort of the flashy one to show off here. So what I'm actually going to talk about a little bit is skills having to do with using a different agent harness, specifically the Pi agent harness, which is what I've switched to recently. Kind of moved away from the Claudes and the Codexes of the world and discovered Pi. I think a couple of people have spoken about it on this podcast. But
yeah, I have.
and
It's
yeah.
awesome, and I encourage everyone to check it out.
Yeah, and you know, the nice thing about, I won't kind of reiterate all of the features of Pi. You can go to pi.dev and look at it yourself. But the short version of that is that it's very much stripped down analog to Claude Code or open code, and which sounds a bit like a drawback in that you're going to miss out on a lot of the nice features that a Claude Code will have. But increasingly, I'm interested in kind of a bespoke AI experience that is tailored to the way that I work. And so just as Hamel was saying before, more and more I'm avoiding skills that other people are publishing on skills.sh and essentially just writing them myself. And one of the nice things about Pi is that when you run Pi, you aren't just running a compiled TUI, a binary. You're actually running an environment that is linked to its own source code. And so if you want a skill to do something with GitHub Actions, for example, you can just ask Pi to do it. And so Pi will write a skill that you can customize to your liking and specify some nuances that perhaps only you will use and other people may not. It's really easy to do. And again, you can iterate on it and kind of do it yourself. It's really, really easy. Pi can actually fix itself. So when something's going wrong, you can ask it what's going wrong, diagnose it, and then we'll actually go in and even alter its own source tree when it's needed. So it's this sort of self-aware TUI, really good auto compaction, things like that. Let me actually share my screen here.
And while you're doing that, I'll just add. So for those who have heard of OpenClaw as well, and you don't know Pi, but OpenClaw is built on top of Pi.
Exactly.
Check out the beautiful. Pi has a beautiful short system prompt as well. I do encourage everyone to check that out. And 4 tools: read, write, edit, bash. And as Chris alluded to, the philosophy of Pi is to get it to celebrate writing code and building its own tools, and it will build tools and hot reload them so that they can be used immediately. And it's written in TypeScript. I've actually just linked in Discord to a workshop I had the deep pleasure to conduct with Ivan Leo, who he was at Manus at the time building agents. Now he's at DeepMind. But we taught a workshop on how to build something like Pi with some OpenClaw functionality in Python. So definitely check that out if you don't only want to use it, but kind of see how you can build something like this.
Yeah.
Point your agent at the repository and watch it build it as well.
Exactly. It's a lot of fun, actually. I have a lot of fun doing it. It's kind of my procrastination device these days, is to try to tweak my Pi setup, which can be dangerous. So this repo, and again, as Hamel said before, don't you can install this yourself, which is great, but fork it and customize it yourself, or even better, just ask Pi to create an analog of anything that's in here for yourself. And that's exactly what I've done, right? So the first thing that strikes you about Pi when you start using it is some of the stuff that is missing out of the box from Claude Code. So one of the big things that I used all the time in Claude Code is /simplify, right? So I'm not sure how Claude 4.8 is going to work, but in past versions of Claude Code, particularly when you're doing data science tasks, it will not necessarily create the most efficient implementation of, let's say, a PyMC model that you might like. And so calling /simplify after you implement something is a really nice way to kind of slim it down and make sure that it's that it's something that you're proud of and something that works well. And so so I created a simplify slash command in Py as well. I use the new shell instead of bash. So I've got an extension that will intercept bash commands and route it through new shell. I think Hamel mentioned before one of the popular skills out there that I highly recommend is the Grill Me skill. I think it's Matt Pocock that published that originally. I have an implementation of that here called Socratic Review. The idea behind that is that one of the best ways to convince an agent to implement something well, implement something that you have in mind, is to actually have a back and forth with it to clarify uncertainties. And so the Grill Me skill essentially induces Claude most of the time to ask you questions about what you've requested that it do. And sometimes it'll drill down into sort of 20, 25 stages of questions. This is a similar thing here, Socratic Review. So it'll essentially ask you a series of questions until it's happy with what it's about to do, kind of at the planning stage. So that is here as well. One of the things I'll demo here is an implementation of plan reviewing and implementation reviewing that has actually turned out quite nicely. So let me switch over to that sharing. Here we go. Here's my, so this is my, this is the Z editor, kind of my weapon of choice for using agents. I actually these days don't use it as much as a text editor / IDE, but actually more of an AI agent multiplexer. So over here on the left-hand side, I've got a series of agents running in different projects simultaneously, and I can just flip back and forth between them as needed. Because some of these take a little bit of time to run, I've actually run a few of these ahead of time, and I'm just in one of the PyMC project repositories called distributions. So these are PyTensor implementations of the probability distributions that we currently have in PyMC. And we've been actually adding more and more of these over time, and eventually they'll replace the ones that we currently have in PyMC. And so I just went in and looked at one of the, say I want to implement a probability distribution that doesn't yet exist inside of PyMC distributions. And so the half-flat distribution is one that I'm going to pick here. And a half-flat distribution is just as the name implies, it's got equal probability over its entire range, supported range, and the half-flat is from 0 to positive infinity. So just a slightly interesting distribution to implement that isn't already in there. And of course, you start by asking your agent to generate a plan to do that. And then what I was finding that I was doing with my planning was, as I think John said before, I was asking the agent to do the sort of same review process over and over again in the same way. And so rather than saving myself some typing, created a Py skill that is called review plans. And so you can just type in review plans here, and then you pointed at the set of plans that was created, and this was saved to plans / half-flat implementation. And so you just pointed at the plans half-flat implementation, and it will run and present its findings to you, and write those findings to a local markdown file. And what it will do is it will find, red flags, yellow flags if they exist. This one was pretty clear. A half-flat distribution isn't very difficult to implement, so it was pretty clean out of the gate. So perhaps this wasn't the best example to do, but and then based on you can write that review to a local markdown file and then ask the original agent to implement it. And I like to go back and forth between different instances and sometimes even different models. So you can, in Pi, you can cycle through different models. So for example, I might use DeepSeek 4 Pro to do my reviewing and then give it back to something like Qwen to do the implementation. And then after the implementation is done, there's an additional skill called review implementation that will do something similar. And so at the review stage, I go back and forth using these Pi skills to iterate over the plan until there are no more red or yellow flags, run the implementation, and then do exactly the same thing with review implementation. So again, these are just skills that I've come up with myself simply by asking Pi to do it. And then I've saved it to QtPy so that I can, keep it current, update it, and have it constantly available as a repository to share with others.
Really cool. And do you have different types of agents that, for example, doing the reviewing and then the and that you're using Qwen? Is that also part of the of Pi, and the skill is which model to use for which context?
I usually make that on the fly depending on what I'm doing. I've kind of switched away a little bit from frontier models for this, and I typically use some combination of the newer Qwen models. The DeepSeek, the latest DeepSeek Max R4 model is really good, and then Kimi K2.6, and different ones have different strengths. Kimi is a really good coding agent. DeepSeek a little bit better at data science tasks, and this is just something that you learn over time. So I typically will pick it myself, but you could add an auto selection feature to the skill as well if you needed to.
Cool.
Yeah.
I am interested. I haven't used Zed a lot, and I mean, a lot of people coming on the show. Zed and Pi are two things that, and I use Pi a lot. But what drew you to Zed, and what's kept you there?
So I'm before using Zed, I was a heavy VS Code user, and that was primarily tied to the fact that I was building a lot of Jupyter notebooks, and VS Code has and Cursor have really good, really the only ones that support the rendering of Jupyter notebooks for Python models. But recently, I know you had Vincent Varmadam on the show recently. I've switched most of my work over to using Marimo notebooks, which no longer require sort of the big JSON that Jupyter spits out at you, and so you're working with Python files instead. And so Zed doesn't currently support Jupyter, and so I was looking to sort of transition away from kind of the heavy IDE that VS Code is into something that's a little bit faster. And on top of that, traditionally I'm a VI or NeoVim user, and Zed has a really nice Vim mode, native Vim mode, and so kind of supports my sort of instinctual coding habits, and it's written in Rust, so it's very fast.
Yeah, and
But
Marius,
yeah,
who's sorry, I was just going to say, Marius, who's in the chat, and congrats on Ken, Marius. So excited to see what you and Wes and Philip Cloud get up to there. He's written, Z is nice, the not needing to pay the electron tax helps, which I think we can all feel. I'm glad you mentioned Marimo as well. And when thinking like through the provocative, like fuck skills take, I do think, I agree with everything Hamel says. I said there, not everything Hamel says. Once again, when people share skills and I can personalize them, can be eminently useful. And the Marimo pair skill is one that I find that deeply with. I also, if people want to see that in action, check out the episode from last week with Vincent, or the episode the week before with Eric Ma, who he takes us through how he uses Marimo pair to do exploratory data analysis. And it felt like watching, I'm being slightly hyperbolic, but it felt like watching Mozart or something. Like watching Eric in sync with Marimo pair explore, genetic data, visualize all these different molecular data sets and that type of stuff was really powerful stuff.
Yeah, I basically live inside of Marimo pair these days. And so this is a really nice way of doing it. I often have multiple sessions open at once. So again, this multiplexer is really, really handy. I used to have multiple ghosty terminals open simultaneously, and having to flip between them was a little bit awkward. Zed pops up a nice little notification when something's finished, so you can switch over to it, and you don't, you get in that situation where you're stuck, where Claude is stuck waiting for permission to do something, and you thought it was chugging away, and so getting an alert from Zed is really helpful. So it's a nice integration of kind of lightweight editing, because again, we're not using the editor quite as much anymore. Really good integration with the various models. Like you can spin up a terminal thread, which is typically how I work here, because if you want to use, let's say, Claude Code via the subscription, which is what I have, the Claudemaxxing subscription, you're not actually allowed to use that inside of things like OpenCode anymore. And so this is a way of using it that's well integrated with Zed. When your diffs come up, it will open up inside of the editor. But then you can also open and it's got an ACP implementation as well that's a little bit more integrated with Zed and uses its kind of custom interface. But I find the ACP is a little bit slower, so I typically just use terminal sessions.
Awesome.
How extensible is Zed? I've been looking for like a new place to host my, like, kind of dock my agents. Can you build whatever you want in it?
I mean, it's got published extensions. A lot of them are just MCP servers or language servers. So it's extensible, in that sense. If you've got a local extension, you can install it, from a repository as well. I don't customize things too much, other than, this is back on VS Code, I used the Wes Boss's Cobalt 2 theme, and there wasn't one for Zed, so wrote a Cobalt 2 theme and published that as an extension. So it's pretty easy.
And we are already seeing base PyMC code on your screen. You're also teaching a workshop in London soon, right? What are students gonna learn there?
Well, they're gonna learn all of the new PyMC 6 stuff, of course. Back in the pre-COVID times, I used to do a lot of live PyMC course teaching, or in general Bayes course teaching, which I really, really like. Our Zoom courses are great, and I get a lot out of them, and I think our students do as well. But man, you can't beat the interactivity of being in a room with some experts and bouncing ideas off of one another, and that sort of level of engagement. is really second to none. And so, yeah, I was trying to get more of these live courses going, and so we thought, right on the heels of PyData London next weekend, just let's do a PyMC course. And so it's a 2.5-day long live course in downtown London, in East London, actually, where we'll sit around. And 2.5 days is a really good sweet spot. I think once you get to the end of like 3 days, everybody's ready to lose their mind. But 2.5 days is a nice chunk of time to really dig into some useful topics like the new time series stuff, state space models in PyMC, Gaussian processes, BART models, things like that. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be me, Niall Alton, and Rob Zinkov, both of whom should be on this show sometime because they have a ton of skills.
Yeah, we'll have to bring them on. Well, thanks so much. That was really interesting. Excited. Hugo, shall we?
Yeah. And so we've also linked to Chris's workshop and course in London in Discord for anyone interested. And Doug has commented in Discord, what problems can you fix a PyMC hammer? This is absolutely wonderful. We're going to need to riff on this a bit more. Before introing Doug, I do want to say, I want to clarify perhaps a slight misconception that this show is about agent skills, and it's my fault for calling it Show Us Your, in brackets, agent skills, but it was a joke, and it's really about how to work with agents, so we might have to think about slightly rebranding at some point, but it really is about, showing workflows, and some of those are skills, some are not, which I think brings us maybe to some of the stuff Doug will show today that he's doing with auto research, which is another really interesting vector for what we're seeing at the moment. And I will introduce Doug first via video. And Chris, for some reason, I can't stop you sharing your screen.
Oh,
so
sorry.
If you wouldn't mind. No, that's, it looked beautiful, but this is equally beautiful to intro Doug. So
I love it.
That is Doug in Search of Search, and I couldn't keep you 8-bit, man. Like, I put in at the start, the middle, and the end of the prompt, make sure Doug stays 8-bit the entire time, but in Search of Search clearly meant you needed to break forth into multi-dimensional space,
Yeah.
what we occasionally misguidedly refer to as reality. Doug led teams, search teams at Shopify, Reddit, Wikipedia. In 2012, Doug got bit by the search bug, and he's still trying to keep up. From full text search to learning to rank models to search agents that generate their own code, Doug navigates and knows the endless maze and landscape firsthand. I mentioned he led teams at Reddit, Shopify, and Wikipedia. He's also author of 2 wonderful books. You can see one in the background behind John, not behind Doug. John's one of the best Doug hype guys.
They're behind me, actually. You just can't. Might be hard to see.
Man, always playing hard to get. And he's also authored, what a verb, AI-powered search, advised over 100 organizations over the years, all in pursuit of the same question: how does search actually work? Teaches several great Maven courses, and we've just added one to the roster. So Doug and I will be teaching building AI agents for the enterprise, incorporating a lot of search stuff. And as I said before, I just want to make clear that search has always been incredibly important in data science, machine learning, product. But as part of this kind of generative AI revolution, I think the ability to deliver value to organizations by building products that robustly incorporate search just has opened up so much. And I think we're already seeing the amount of jobs for builders who work in search going up and up and up. So if you're going to add anything to your toolkit that you don't have yet, like getting better at search, I think is something which will I mean, I'm doing it in order to future-proof myself as well. So I do highly encourage everyone to be in search of search and follow Doug to do so.
Yeah, and I was bit, like you said, I was bit by the bug in 2012. I'm still in that labyrinth trying to find my way out. Somewhere out there, I'm pulling that. What is that? You're pulling the string or whatever that
to
you're
escape
asked to pull.
the
Escape the
search
Minotaur.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Thanks
for having me.
You know I'm going to build like an 8-bit video game of you escaping the Minotaur from the search maze now.
Oh yeah, totally. That would be great. It goes with the Turnbull somehow too.
Absolutely. All right, let's jump in.
Yeah,
it's your
sure.
Turnbull.
Yeah. Let me share my screen.
Oh, yeah, sorry. First 2 questions. What do
yeah.
you love most about working with agents?
I mean, I love the fact that they mostly do what I tell them to do. They get a lot of work done, and they come with they basically come with a pre-built encyclopedia of a compressed version of the entire human knowledge. And I can just point that at a problem, and it generally solves the problem. What I like least, or what I find most frustrating working with agents, is the inconsistency. So I tweeted this before. I actually tweeted this earlier. It's like there are some days where it's like that agent wants to beg permission to do any minor thing. You wanted me to do that thing that we were talking about. And then there are other days where it's just like completely overconfident and thinks the human is stupid and is just going to like delete all of my code and go crazy. So there's like this weird level of inconsistency where I can't decide if it's very timid, it needs to sort of walk on eggshells around me, or if it needs to like go crazy and just remove and go hog wild in my code base. That's probably the number one thing I just deal with day to day, trying to like get it in a good state with like, okay, yes, you can do that. You're okay, but don't go farther than this line.
Totally relatable. So what are you going to show us today?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about auto research and some of the fun stuff I do. Let's see. I'm going to share my screen. Everyone see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd muted myself.
Okay.
If you could zoom in a bit, that could be useful.
Yeah. So a lot of stuff going on here. It's not like super important. I just like to show. This is what we're going to talk about today. This like matrix concoction I have going on here with like something happening in the upper left, which I'll talk about in a minute. Man, it's sort of a task that's described by this thing on the right. Just to show off my setup, I use OpenCode a lot. And I don't know what happened that this shot up to $55 today, but yeah, I use OpenCode a lot. So OpenCode is a coding agent. I just kind of got into it. I don't know exactly why or how I got into it. Other than I just like the fact, sort of maybe similar to other people, I just like being able to switch between different kinds of models and play around with some of the open models and that kind of thing. And I'm going to show off what exactly this crazy concoction is doing. So I work in search, and in search, we have these sort of like basic algorithms that are well-known algorithms for doing search. And for those who don't know about search, there's a couple of families, I would say, of retrieval systems. And when I say retrieval systems, if you don't work in search, you could just replace that with database. And it's somewhat analogous if you've come up through the NoSQL world of like, there's a database like Redis, and it's really good at key value storage. And there is a database like a relational database like Postgres, and it's good at joining sort of these like join operations and bringing together information from different tables. And we sort of have a similar thing in search, where we have the quote unquote databases, or sometimes we'll say search engines, things like Elasticsearch that of course been around for a while. And we have things like vector databases, which people may know, which is another kind of retrieval system. But we have these different backends, these different ways of retrieving information from potentially petabytes of information out there. And there's a couple of families of those, and none of them are obsolete. They're all really important. And probably, if you're on this podcast, you may know, of course, about embeddings and vector search that came up, especially after ChatGPT came out, when everyone was building RAG. And that's, of course, very important. You've got great solutions out there, and like TurboPuffer, Pinecone, Weaviate, Quadrant. Like, I'm gonna forget some, but there are dozens of them out there, and they're all great. But we also still have this way of doing search that's keyword based. That is literally like, I take a query like red shoes, and I need to find the item in this corpus that has the most occurrence of red, the most occurrence of shoes, weighed by what's most important, which of those terms is most important. And that's called BM25. And BM25 is a way of, it's basically the optimal way that people figured out decades ago for doing keyword matching. And it's still very powerful, and it is still a very compelling baseline. And it tends to be, to this day, perform extremely well. It's very fast. Like, you can spin up a lexical index and get BM25 search working really fast.
Can I just add there, Doug?
Yeah.
I've learned from you and from other people. One way for those who haven't heard of BM25 is to think about it. For those who've done machine learning, on binary classification, first baseline majority class classifier, right? Not always great, but if you're not beating that, whatever. BM25 should be that first baseline, but it's actually way more performant than a majority class classifier on average ever will be. So it's a great baseline. In the end, you'll probably want some form of hybrid search, but when people, I think because we are obsessed as a culture with vector embeddings and semantic search and that type of stuff like these are like $100 bills left on the floor. Absolutely.
And the thing about any embedding model is a trained artifact, and you're probably pulling, most people are probably pulling like OpenAI's like embedding model, or you're probably going to Hugging Face or something and getting an embedding model. Those are always trained. You have to know what they're trained on. You have to understand that they're optimized for a specific task. BM25, you don't have to assume that at all. It just kind of works. Like, you don't have to do anything. It's basically a version of TF-IDF, for if you know what that is, which is really just a way of saying, I'm going to score the matches by how often they occur. And and that's, of course, if shoe occurs 100 times or a lot of times in this document, it means it's more relevant than if it occurred like 2 times. And then there's this other important factor, document frequency, which just says that if you search for Luke Skywalker in a movie corpus, Skywalker is going to basically only occur in Star Wars information or Star Wars movies. Luke is going to occur all over the place in many contexts. So Skywalker is way more specific to the user's intent. And you can see that just by seeing that it occurs in fewer documents. So that inverse document frequency is that like notion of weighing Skywalker to be more important than Luke. And all to say that if you go and look up the BM25 math, which you can do in like this BM25 or this Wikipedia article, you can see here, and there is, let me actually get Desmos, I got that. There's all these ways that people have figured out that the term frequency, this is like my most visited. Yeah, there's all the, I probably made this 10 years ago myself trying to figure this out. There are all of these, this blue line here is sort of how, like, normally if we were just to do raw TF-IDF, the x-axis here is the term frequency, is the actual term frequency. But what people have figured out, so for the longest time, people would just say, I'm going to figure out a TF-IDF score by taking x and somehow dividing it by the document frequency. That's what raw TF-IDF is. What BM25 basically figured out was like that the importance, like having more matches occur in a document saturates. So it's not suddenly more relevant if you get 5 matches of Skywalker versus 4. That 0 to 1 step change is actually what's really important. So there are insights like this that have come out through, honestly, people dorking around with heuristics against open data sets. The data sets we had decades ago for search. So why this is interesting to me and where this gets agenty is I started to play around with doing, taking BM25. I have some code that looks basically like this. This is from a blog article of mine. It's not from reddit.com, which I don't know why that says that. There it goes. I have taken there's a very popular question answering data set called MS Marco. I think it stands for Microsoft, and I don't know what Marco stands for. I think it stands for something. And all MS Marco is a set of questions in a corpus of like, I think it's like 10 million passages. It's the original chunked data set when we talk about RAG and chunking, where we take our corpus and we chunk it into little paragraphs, basically. And in that data set, we have a question and the identifier of a document that is the answer. So the question might be like, what is the capital of Paris, France? And the answer might be like the identifier of this like paragraph snippet describing Paris. And that's the answer to what is the capital of France. And so this test set exists, which is great. It's an amazing corpus that helps us evaluate question answering systems. And people will go and they'll say, well, let me try my algorithm, or I'll train on MS Marco. That's the other thing. It's a training set. Let me try out my algorithm to see how good it is at surfacing like the right answer to the question. So far, so good. I'll stop there just to make sure the trainer in me wants to make sure I'm all good.
Yeah, great. I'm wondering if Thomas or John, any questions?
I think we just built the test bed for the agent you're about to introduce.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So if you take BM25, if you write the code for BM25, which is basically this little snippet. This is Python code. You tokenize the query up into a set of search terms. You don't have to know too much about this, but you can think about this as a white space split, and there's some stemming and things going on, like taking words down to their root form. This corpus description snowball array, this is all part of like a lexical search pandas extension that I use called search array. But all this is doing is this is the passage I was just describing, like that little paragraph on what is Paris, or what is the capital of France. And then this for term in terms is just iterating the query terms. And it does some very naive things using NumPy arrays. But what it does is it gets the term frequency of this term. So this term might start out as like what is the capital of Paris, France. The term frequency might, get the term frequency of every of what in every document in this corpus. So this is going to be like an array of 1 million items. The doc frequency here is just a single floating point number because it's the doc frequency of the of what, which is going to be very high. So it's a very common term. And then down here, all we're doing is this TF times 1K. All this is doing is BM25. So BM25, perfectly good. So what I started to play with was, I was doing this back in October. Could I ask an agent to propose patches to this code? And given I have an eval set, can I then evaluate how, whether or not that change produces a higher eval score on this MS Marco data set? So could I find basically a better BM25? And I don't want to claim I'm going to find a better BM25 that's going to work on every data set. That would involve a lot more work, because BM25 is one of those things people frequently say they find a better thing of, and they often fail. But for this data set, which almost every search team just cares about their data set that they work with at their job, could I find basically a better retrieval function? A slightly better way of doing the keyword matching. And that's what I have here. So I have a whole auto research setup. I give the two main tools. So I do this myself, actually. I would love to understand more about Pi, because I think it might be able to do this for me. But I basically built my own code editing workflow. And a code editing, like how you actually go through and build a coding agent, is actually, the coding part is actually not that hard. You're basically designing a tool call that does a search and replace, that says, like, find this snippet of code, go to find another end of the code, and delete all that and replace it with this new text I gave you. Like, it's actually not that hard if you've played around with agents and you feel comfortable building an MCP or your own tools. Like, that part of it's actually not that hard.
And you also it's good to have one, but you don't even need a system prompt. With stronger models,
good point.
These days, if you have, your tool definitions, looking all right.
Yeah, and I just want to talk through quickly really quickly the rough workflow that seems to have worked. I've actually have another iteration on this, but I'll probably talk about that at some future date, maybe in a blog article. But the workflow, like, I basically arrived at, there's a couple of core tools that I give the agent. I let the agent, so just there's some obvious things. Like, I let the agent run re-rank. I let the agent run this directly on a single query. And if that query has evals, I will return the top results labeled. That's not in this blog article, and there are other things like I let it revert changes and that sort of thing. But when it comes to code editing, what I've really found is really important with this stuff, because in almost every time I teach my agentic search course, Cheat at Search with Agents, someone will see something I'm doing and say, let me just go to Claude Code and tell it to make search better. What almost always happens with that is you get this, like, overfit. If it's this query, return this, basically this set of results. It's massively overfit. So if you just tell Claude Code to make search better, here are some evals, that's what's going to happen. So you need to actually think really carefully about the optimization flow. And it's a bit of progressive disclosure, actually. And you could think about it as, I'm going to have some training data, and I want the agent to be able to see it's honestly any ML problem. I've got training data and I've got validation data. I might have some other holdout validation for entirely. And their training data exists to let the agent really, really introspect on the behavior of like those specific queries. So what happens is the agent calls this tool try out patch. That's its like little sandbox way of evaluating things. I'll make a little edit and make a new re-ranker function. And then on those, like, let's say out of 1,000 queries, I don't know, several hundred, 200, 800, 300, I don't know, whatever I pick, training queries change. I will eval on those training queries that I've set aside to let the agent really dig into, and I will give like really detailed information of what happened to those training queries. So the agent will be in this flow for a while of just trying out patches. And eventually it'll arrive something it likes that it wants to basically apply, or now I use the word commit. Like one tip I got was like tool naming is actually really important to how agents use this stuff. I found commit is actually even more powerful. But if the agent sees a change it wants to make, it calls this apply patch tool. So it's dorked around in its training set that it knows about. There is some holdout data that it doesn't know about. And it will try to apply the patch, and I will run that on a validation data set, and I will either accept it or reject it based on whether this change improved the holdout validation or didn't improve the holdout validation. And that helps to prevent most of the stupid overfitting that agents tend to do to ranking code. And when I did all of this stuff and I was working with this data set, there's a lot of other details in here, but I want to jump down to what the code is kind of a nightmare, but what it actually did that was kind of interesting. And I think there's more work to be done here. It came up with the idea of removing stop words. And it added a small, basically bigram boost. So like 2-word phrases. So the what is and what is capital France. It turned out that there was some multiplier times, like just counting how many times that bigram occurred in the document was important. And then removing stop words from the actual query. So stop words are things like the, a, like just words that occur in every document. And I think just to finish this, I've learned a lot about building agentic workflows through this, and I find auto research such an amazing place to learn about this stuff. With the other thing about auto research, this gets back to the things I really like about agents. Yes, there are like examples of agents solving Erdos problems and things like this. But I would say for 99.9999999% of the work that we're doing, what it's really doing is these are like somewhat obvious things that probably are in its training data. Like removing stop words from question answering is a very common thing to do in lexical search, and probably also doing like little phrase or bigram boosts and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting just to see, like, could I set up an optimization process that is more or less like trying ideas that are in some ways like existing, more interesting to just try lots of ideas that are existing human corpus of ideas to try on these problems than necessarily like looking for a Fields Medal winning solution to search or something like that. Yeah, so that's basically it.
Super cool. Thanks, Doug. And I've linked to your post and the notebook in Discord as well. I am interested because one kind of foundational philosophy of auto research is giving agents more and more freedom to do their thing. And, you know, something we've seen a lot in this series is verification is incredibly important, and particularly when starting out, right, working on something. So I wondered, you know, in this case in particular, but more generally, how you think about building trust with the agent to then give it more and more scope and more time or space to do things and bring you back results.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's very what auto research has taught me is that auto research is like an extreme example of trusting agents to go nuts and just work on a problem until some metric increases. But like it's kind of full circle back to lessons of doing any machine learning is you really need guardrails. You really need to have good, think about the evals and training that you're giving the auto research to reason about. And all the gotchas are really about process. They're not necessarily about like the idea that the agent had. Like it really forces you to think about the full process.
I got some questions about the what the agent was seeing along the way. Like, is auto research effectively the same thing as Ralph, where it's like, here is success, just keep doing it, or are you like, and that would work. That's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum, like while you're talking, my mind was going to the research that Google did, and I forget quite which field it was.
Yeah,
but
the rank evolve or
they were evolving. It's like, here's 20 solutions, we'll try them, and then present you with all the, you know, how they did and break it down to like how they did in certain domains even, and then let the agent have enough autonomy to say, okay, I want this part of the strategy and I want that part of that strategy. So like, could you save the outputs? Let's see, what would you do? Could you save like the script itself, where this is the relevance algorithm, but also save like the metadata of like, when I ran this, it was really good on high TF fields. And
yeah, you totally can do that. One thing I didn't show, so I didn't show the full 2-hour long version of this, but one thing about this is I actually, every time, so the agent runs, it knows the code, it knows its tools, that it can change the code and measure its changes and try to save code changes. But it does one round of that. So I don't expect the agent to go and do everything in one pass. So the agent will run and it will give me a message summarizing what changed. And then there will be a new re-rank. I call it re-ranker because it's there's a new ranker code. But I take the output of that round and then I start a new round. So I've been just serializing these rounds. There's a lot of other potential workflows for this. Like, could you fork them somehow? Could you go in different directions? It is a very genetic aspect to it too, of could you get the ideas, like the best part of different ideas to combine? Yeah, there's a lot that I think is like,
I've been trying to hack with you and stuff. One thing that kind of intersects with some of my interest here is, could you give it a knowledge base? And by knowledge base, I basically mean an Obsidian vault, its own wiki. But basically, whenever it starts doing an analysis, it just keeps its own, like the lab journal. It says, well, here's what this did, and I think this is important to measure. You'd obviously have to seed it correctly. Otherwise, it's going to start doing boring stuff, like it'll just it won't use it correctly. I've had that bad experience before.
Yeah.
And that might be interesting to see how it's learning what it needs to pay attention to, and then hopefully using that and coming to solutions that are more holistic, like grabbing the pieces and parts from everything it's learned.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I did experiment. I haven't seen it like have a dramatic impact yet, but I did experiment with like uh, giving it a search tool over the logs and traces of the past agentic runs. But I haven't. I think this gets to why agentic memory is like why grep probably isn't great agentic memory finder, and why people are building actual agentic memory architectures. But I've tried that. I haven't seen too much amazing outcomes yet, but it could just be the structure of that across agents, like how agentic memory is organized is not. I haven't cracked that nut yet. So maybe you'll convince me to hack on that with you at some point.
I mean, we should all hack on memory. Memory is, and this has been a through line through the series as well, deeply challenging for everyone.
Yeah, totally. It's yet another search problem.
Yeah, like I've got so many beefs with the way I think memory works, but I'm sure there's one of your episodes I have to watch and that'll like fill in all the blanks.
What are your questions?
Um,
Or what's your beef?
So the way that humans remember things works out just spectacularly well and is so absent.
Does it though?
Oh yeah. Well, okay. Like once I clarify
What's your
my
name?
point, you'll be like, okay.
I mean, I can remember the quadratic. I can remember stuff I learned at elementary, primary school, and can't remember important stuff that happened last week. Like, don't get me wrong, actually. Sorry. I mean, clearly human memory is an incredible thing.
I remember the name of every dog I meet, but never their owners.
Okay.
My point is that I actually think we can do better with agent memory in the end than human memory, and that shouldn't be what we're shooting for.
Well, I would love to get philosophical. I don't know if we have time for that right
Well,
now.
no, I'm being eminently practical. Like, I literally remember things from when I was 10 that aren't important and there are certain things that happened last week that I need to write down that are important, and I write them down because my memory doesn't function properly there.
But there's something that I want the agents to do, and there's nothing there where they could do it. If you have your AI intern that shows up to work, then they get their like onboarding document. Like here's how you should perform your job. And a normal intern, a human, would be like, whenever they screw up on something, build this project and you just use the wrong like architecture. The next day, when the boss is like, hey, let's build a thing, then you have this visceral pain. It's like, I am reminded of an episodic memory, and then I can replay that stuff and turn it into semantic and procedural memories that what should be applied here. But we automatically feel the pain and the desire to remember, which I don't see an easy way for machines to do that during a long conversation. Maybe right at the beginning you got a shot, but the next thing is like, what do you search for? If you're talking about like you're the boss and you're talking about like here's a product we make today, and it's a completely different product than I made yesterday and kind of screwed everything up on, then I can't take the search terms, the like actual words you're using right now, and use that for a search. I have to take some sort of situation from this. Like there's a different aspect that is really the key into the index. And humans index that perfectly well. It's like I'm reminded of the pain, and it just draws me back to that and offers that memory up as like, should you pay attention to this? And we do that subconsciously. So how do you do that with memory? Are the memory systems like even touching that?
Not to my knowledge. I'd be interested if anyone in the chat or anyone watching afterwards does. And I think, to your point, I think those are examples of human memory systems which it would be great to have in agents. But I do think there are lots of things that we can do far better with agents than humans.
One thing I want to mention in some ways of closing the auto research angle, I do want to mention that all of this stuff in the blog article I did on making a better BM25 for MS Marco, I do want to plug, and it's too bad they didn't hit the publish button on this today, but Vespa is a well-known search engine company, Vespa.ai, like Vespa, like the same as the little tiny motorcycles. They have a blog article coming out that improves further on what I did, using some of their own features and auto researching some of the cool things you can do with there, with like how close terms are that match and in the phrasage and these kinds of things. So keep an eye out for that. If you follow me, Software Doug everywhere, I'm sure I'm going to repost it.
Also, Marius has commented in the chat. Where is it? Penalty systems in memory does sound like a good idea. And I know, Doug, you've thought about this with respect to search, kind of hacking, among other things, LLM's desire to people please, to make them better at search.
Yeah, that is the other side, and probably the bulk of that search experiments repo is hacking, like agentic search. So one thing I have found is agentic search, loosely defined, is an agent using some search tools to solve a user's search problem. And we might think of that also kind of like RAG and all these things, but basically there's an agent out there, it's got quote unquote a query, it has tools like BM25 or some way to call your Elasticsearch or something. And it does its best to use these tools to call them and pull back some search results, think about them, and try to give you the best it can give you. And agentic search is like just adding an agent to any search is an instant 10% boost. But what really is cool is, to your point, Hugo, and to what Marius is saying, a single like naive LLM judge labeling results after a single pass of that and sending it back into the agent as a user message saying, I like this, I didn't like this, just based on that LLM judge trying to assess whether this product that came back from your store is actually relevant for red shoes or not. That's actually, it's oddly amazing how much that improves search. It's like, I'm not using some fancy crazy model to do the labeling, the judging. It's like the same model. I often benchmark things with GPT-5 something mini. And it's pretty interesting how just like giving a user message back to the agent really adjusts its behavior to account for that. In a way, it doesn't adjust its behavior from its own reasoning. So there may even be like a meta point that is maybe worth research if there's a researcher here. Will agents take reasoning more seriously if it's like comes in the form of a user message?
Fascinating. And Marius has also commented that Git plus Markdown but grep as a dumb memory system for auto research and a lot of other things. It can get you remarkably far. Of course, as we saw though, and we've discussed this at length, Doug, just the two of us in lightning lessons we've done together early on, right? Even like Claude Code, Boris Cherney, they discovered they were grepping and they were like, actually hybrid search and agentic search is the way to go with a lot of these things. Yeah, totally. I think if you have what I have tended to find in my own benchmarking is if you have an agent and grep, it will perform at or slightly better than if you were to just use BM25 directly with no agent. It's not like on relatively small data sets. So like I think the general threshold is 100,000 documents or less. It's generally so far not at the point where I'm worried about job security because everyone will just be grepping to everything. But there is a scale and there is I already have an agent in the loop that can grep consideration that just, it makes a lot of sense to just use that. Totally. Well, Doug, thank you so much for coming and showing us your agent skills and workflows. Oh, such a pleasure, man. And thank you all for joining and sticking around. We've gone over time, but we've had, 160 people join throughout. And so thank you all for joining. Thank you for all the wonderful questions and vibe on Discord as well. As I mentioned before, or Thomas mentioned, our agentic data science course starts next week. So I put a link in Discord. It's in the YouTube description as well. And there's a code there for 10% off. I've also, in the Discord and in YouTube, linked to where you can register for our next Show Us Your Agent Skills, which will, Isaac Flath from Kentro Tech is joining, Matt from Conductor is joining, and the one, the only, John Berryman will be joining as well. And I'm wondering, John, if you wanted to give us a teaser at all, or the types of things you're thinking about, or what you want to show.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I've been playing around with PyDev a lot recently. It came on like a bolt of lightning earlier this year that the ways that I've built workflows in the past has been very bespoke, like, bound up with Python if-then statements between model calls, that type of workflows. But the agents last November, December got good enough that you can write workflows like in skills. And this has kind of revolutionized everything. You can use the skills almost like it's the programming language. So I made that cognitive leap, and that's kind of like one aspect of it. It's very useful because like my clients can read the code. The code is English. But then the next cognitive leap is like, okay, well, the agent itself is, right now we use an agent harness and it's bound to like the terminal a lot of times. It's used only for like software development. I think we're entering a time where we're starting to explore what it can do outside of that broadly, OpenClaw, Hermes, and I want to push that to its limits. I want my agent to know everything about me, so OpenClaw, Hermes, kind of like that, but I also want my agent to follow me wherever I go. So it's available in every website, it's available in the terminal, it's available in my software, it's available on my phone when I walk to different stores. And I want it to be aware of the environment. So when it goes to all these different places, it's like, oh, you're in Lowe's. And so I can download the skill set to know, where all the products are in Lowe's and the prices. And I also know what you're doing that day. So like, it's super useful. I built my own facsimile of it, and it's like, I'm just using it all the time. It's been fun.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for that teaser. And can't wait to see your agent skills and workflows next month. This is closing out season 1. We've had four episodes with a bunch of really interesting, wonderful builders, and looking forward to seeing you all in a few weeks. Thank you once again for joining. And in the famous words of Dr. Dre, see you in the next episode.